Well, one of the most interesting shows that's getting a lot of hype all of a sudden is Star Trek United, which would feature Scott Bakula back as Jonathan Archer, now the president of the United Federation of Planets living on Earth. So this concept is being developed by Mike Sussman, who was a writer and producer for Star Trek Enterprise and Voyager. This would be a political thriller, though it would still be sci-fi, obviously, and it would deal with Archer getting the Federation set up. Here's a quote from Sussman. On Enterprise, we didn't really have time to explore the formation of the Federation. The focus was on defense and saving the planet, which of course was vital for the story we were telling. But I believe we were going to lay the groundwork for a government and a state that would champion sentient rights, the rights of all species really, and stand firmly for justice and equality across the galaxy. And that would ultimately lead to the establishment of the Prime Directive. We never really got to dig into all of that on Enterprise as much as I would have liked, and I think we definitely would have if the series had continued beyond Season 4. There's still so much to explore in that era. Scott Bakula and Sussman pitched the idea a few years ago, but Paramount passed. Since then, the two have been refining the idea. I think this show could be great. Sussman said he envisions it being like Andor, basically, but I just don't know if the folks running Paramount are going to be into it, if it would fit into the new vision of Star Trek they're planning. Another show that was pitched and never really picked up or passed on, from what I understand, is the Star Trek live-action comedy that would not focus on Starfleet personnel, but employees of a pleasure planet that's not in the Federation. So some people were saying Risa, but I don't know, Anyway, so this would be set in the 25th century, allowing royalty like Jonathan Frakes or LeVar Burton to guest star as their beloved characters in a light-hearted fashion. Tawny Newsome, who voiced Lieutenant Mariner on Lower Decks, is one of two writers behind this one, and I have to say that while I like Tawny Newsome and I think the live-action space comedy she was on with Steve Carell was great, I just don't know if this is what fans want. I did a video on this idea about a year ago, and I think just about all the comments were against it. So perhaps the most likely show to get made is Star Trek Year 1, which would follow the early days of Kirk and Spock and Uhura and Scotty, etc., as the recast versions that have popped up on Strange New Worlds. It would be easy to do since they have the sets and the actors, and SNW does have its fans who will miss it after it ends with its fifth and final season, which will only be 6 episodes long. The only thing is, Paramount lost a lot of money recently and was nearly run into the ground during the past few years, and the new leadership might want to just reboot Star Trek for the most part and be done with this whole streaming Trek universe. We know that the Starfleet Academy show is really happening, and it is in that universe, but there's no guarantee the new leadership will want to continue with it at all after that. The new CEO, David Ellison, is reportedly a big Star Trek fan. Yeah, guys, he was one of the producers of both the second and third Kelvin timeline Star Trek movies. Now, they do seem to be mulling over another Kelvin timeline movie, but they are saying they are taking a holistic approach to Star Trek, potentially indicating that any new shows will be closely tied to any new movies. I don't think the current streaming Trek universe is popular enough to get theatrical movies, and they say they are pretty much done doing streaming movies like Section 31, so it could be the end of the SNW Disco streaming Trek universe. While I've come to like SNW, I have trouble seeing the new Spock as the old Spock to such a degree that, well, it's just a different Spock, and I personally don't really need to see too much of his life with different versions of all the other TOS heroes. It's cool to see the days before Kirk, but this Spock is too nice. Nimoy's Spock on TOS was not a very nice guy, but fans adored him and still do. I mean, sure, he was a good, heroic guy, but he was often insulting, while the new Spock is the most supportive guy on TV. He's everybody in the crew's best friend. Though there is currently no pitch being put together that we know of, it does seem likely Terry Matalas will be having a meeting with Paramount's new heads to talk about the possibility of doing the highly sought-after Star Trek Legacy that would follow Seven of Nine as the captain of the Enterprise G, and feature who knows from Star Trek Picard. Matalas has said that he wrote the beginning of the pilot of the show just for fun, and it would involve Shaw returning as an emergency engineering hologram and the Klingon Empire. Which brings me back to the Worf show that Michael Dorn was pitching for years, where Worf is the captain of a Klingon ship and he goes around, quote, kicking ass. Michael Dorn is still in incredible shape, and I think now is the time for this show. We also have to remember Star Trek Prodigy only got 2 seasons, even though it got wonderful reviews. So there's a chance the new folks at Paramount, they just might bring it back. The same can be said for Lower Decks, pretty much. I could see Mike McMahon pitching an animated comedy set on Deep Space Nine, couldn't you? Of course, people have been talking about the Tarantino Star Trek film that never got made getting another chance. It would have been set on the gangster planet seen in the TOS episode A Piece of the Action, it turns out. The main reason it never happened was because Tarantino had reservations about directing it, since he's long said he would only direct a total of 10 films. It seems possible the film could now end up being made with another director, and if that happens, it could be that any new shows would need to fit into that universe. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below, and please do like and share this video, and please subscribe. Live long and prosper, and Qapla'!